Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today's guests are Honorable Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here.
Always glad to see you. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kyiv, Ukraine. Welcome to the show,
Hello,
Ivan.
Sasha. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, everyone.
Hey, thank you.
Ivan, so tell me, how is the atmosphere in Kyiv? What people are talking on the streets? Is it life normalized now?
Actually, in Kiev, I think now there are more people than before the Russian invasion, and we don't have any atmosphere of war, unfortunately, or luckily, I don't know, because it's very strange feelings about that. The barricades which were constructed in the beginning of the invasion were dismantled, and the life is quite peaceful. No Russian missile attacks for more than a month already, but we expect them on days. Maybe when Ukrainian counterattack will start, then probably they will have to show stance and opposite to it, and will attack Kiev by missiles again. So, but the life is really like nothing happens except a big number of people in uniforms on streets, and some restrictions which are still here. So something like that.
I was listening yesterday and the day before yesterday, a review of Russian talk shows, those of Solovyov and Simonyan and some others. And they have experts, and they're quite somber people, and they are all devastated by upcoming Ukrainian attack. And I was surprised that on the first channel, on the main channels of Russian television, people openly talking about in details about what kind of fronts Ukrainians are building and how many brigades they're going to have and how NATO trained them and so on. I was just really amazed, because normally they're all lying about almost anything, and here they were horrified and openly discussed.
Even shocked into the truth.
Jonathan, what do you think about this phenomenon?
Well, the interesting thing is that as Ivan has alluded to, the atmosphere in Kiev now seems to be something resembling more of London during World War II, after the Blitz. We've survived the initial shock. We defeated the Luftwaffe. They aren't going to invade. So now we can think about actually taking, rather than being conquered by Russia. Now with the atmosphere and attitude has changed. Now, how and when do we go about taking back the rest of Ukraine from the Russians? It's a subtle change in attitude. Well, subtle, but a rather dramatic change in attitude from the beginning of the war. And now the Russians have had over the past year a rude introduction to reality. And they cannot hide the fact that they've taken massive casualties. They cannot hide the fact that the war has not gone the way they planned. And so now you have an obsession on the part of the Russians with all the details of how the Ukrainians have now all of a sudden gone from being an easy pushover to being 10 feet tall. and since they're not used to this, so of course they're going to be shocked, and they're going to discuss it quite a bit. I've noticed also in the West that there's a lot of speculation, and it's sort of an occupational it's an occupational hazard of being a free society, in that you get a lot of discussion about things that common sense and military planning would say, no, you really shouldn't be discussing our offensive war plans when the enemy is listening. But fortunately also, because we have such a wide variety of experts talking about it, they all differ. And so it's really hard for the Russians to pick out, okay, which one is really telling the truth, which one is really the most accurate. And just this morning, as a matter of fact, I'm looking at some articles and talking about how we're viewing the Russians' preparations for fortifying Crimea, and the various all these details about all of this. And of course, the Ukrainian general staff and the Ukrainian military leaders are all fully aware.
Yeah.
And it was noted that they are taking exceptional care to conceal the exact timing and placement of their attack. They're just like a skilled boxer who sees that his opponent is exhausted and he's just waiting for the opening.
That's interesting what they showed, that fortifications of Russians in Crimea, they're mostly they're doing something on the beaches, and they're fortifying the beaches. Although the attack from the sea is very unlikely, at least at this time. Yeah. Anyways, they're doing that fantastic thing, and I was quite surprised until an expert explained that all they're doing all this work on public beaches. So the public beaches would not be would not be able to be used. So people will have to go to private beaches, which they have not touched, and in the private beach they have to pay money. So it appears to me that owners of the private beaches paid to do all these fortifications on the public beaches, so people would flock to their private beaches. What
Yeah,
again?
and
Be a
actually
heck of a
they
note if Ukraine
still
invaded through the private beaches. But,
yeah. Russian
surprise!
Russian officials they steal a lot of money by constructing those defensive constructions, obviously, and it's a good place for well-known Russian corruption to
Build something.
allow them earn some additional money. So they are so eager to build a lot of those trenches, like those famous 70-kilometer long trench they dig in the occupied Zaporizhia region. But actually, coming back to the experts, I've listened today by a nice video of Yigal Levin. He is an officer of Israeli army, and I think that Israeli army is one of the most powerful, not in means of their power, but in means of their mastery
Oh yeah,
armies in the world, because this is
man for man, they're the equal of any in the world.
a very small country surrounded by enemies from all the sides, which is in war till the date of actually of establishing that country. And he said he expressed really brilliant opinion that those Russian defense preparations for upcoming Ukrainian attack are a piece of bullshit, because Russian doctrine, actually an old Soviet doctrine, is they're based on it, and they can't improvise, they can't show their creativity. All those Russian commanders, they're old Soviet generals, which know only one tactic: to go straight forward or to stay in defense in those trenches.
It's
While
top-down management.
while Ukrainian army and Ukrainian commanders shown great examples of creativity, they are more Western mind commanders, and obviously all those defenses which Russia are preparing, they will not help them to keep occupied territories because they don't have actually they don't have enough forces to control so wide border of occupied territories. And I've heard another opinion that the best tactic for Russians is to leave occupied part of Kherson and Zaporizhia region, and to build their defense only in Crimea and on occupied parts of Lugansk and Donetsk regions. And in this case, probably they will be able to stay a while against the Ukrainian upcoming attack. Otherwise, they will not be able to repeal it.
I don't think that this is sustainable, because if Ukrainians will control the Zaporozhye, Kherson, and there will be no way to supply Crimea except the bridge, and that bridge will be destroyed anytime soon. So how they will supply Crimea as a territory, as an army, as just anything? They will just slowly die, all of them. Now, what's interesting is that there was a belief that one of the uniqueness of Russians is that they're not very good at producing things, and they cannot really mass produce anything, because it's not a production culture country, and they don't need to produce anything because their mineral wealth, they can afford to buy anything what will be produced anywhere in the world. So why do they have to produce, when especially when they have a lot of inefficiencies in their economy, the energy supply, their distances from one place to another? It's just not really a producing country. They cannot produce anything. However, it's all being compensated that Russians are really warriors. They can fight and defeat any enemy. So this is why they don't care about producing anything. They can always either buy something, or if they don't want to sell it, they will grab it and get it anyway. Well, they can grab washing machines in Bucha, and television sets and unitazes, but beside that, they can't even fight. And this is, I see, as a great deterioration of a Russian nation. Because if you take a concept that Russians and Ukrainians are part of the same civilization, this is absolutely untrue. Because what means civilization? There are three the major factors: is language, religion, and culture. Okay, the language is not the same. Ukrainians have Ukrainian language. Russian have their Russian language, which is not even everywhere spoken, like in places like Chechnya or Mordva or some other places. Not all people even speak Russian. Okay, now the culture, a very different culture. We are seeing that Ukraine is westernized, and they have very European trace of their culture. Russian is Asiatic culture, period. So the only thing is religion. Like before, it was perception that, okay, so there is a Orthodox religion which unites both nations. But lately, I started to look at some materials, and they have different now. Ukrainians have different Orthodox church from Russian Orthodox church. Or people in Ukraine still attend the Russian Orthodox church. Do you know that?
Yeah, unfortunately, after the year of war, some people are attending Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, and Russian Orthodox Church, actually, they've claimed that they are not controlled by Russia. They are just just Orthodox Church, and that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is not canonical, not the official one. The only official one church is in Ukraine is the Russian Orthodox Church. It's also a way of propaganda, and now there is a very huge confrontation about the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra. It's
Mhm.
one of the oldest Orthodox relics in Ukraine, and Russian Orthodox Church at least was thrown away from Lavra, and Ukrainian Orthodox Church started to provide services there. But the dispute continues, and especially for me, actually, it's unbelievable how people, after more than a year of Russian invasion, whether the majority of Ukrainian people support the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian army, they want to keep struggle, but at the same time they're going on Easter to Russian Orthodox Church and listen all those blessings for Russian Patriarch Kirill, who at the same time blesses the Russian army which is invading the Ukraine. It's like
He's KGB officer, actually.
yeah, and former KGB, no, actually not former, former KGB and present FSB officer. It's just unbelievable how people don't want to broad their mind and to think about the consequences of them supporting the Russian Orthodox Church. It's the same like continuing to listen Russian music in Ukraine or watching Russian television, continuing to contribute to Russian propaganda. Unfortunately,
Ivan,
some part of Ukrainians.
Is Russian channels are still available in Ukraine, in Kiev?
No, they are blocked but people. Some people have satellite television, and on satellite channels they are not blocked, unless Russia has their own satellites or the international providers don't block all the Russian channels, and some people can get that content via internet using VPN or something like other. It's like the Russian social networks, Kontakte and Odnoklassniki, which are controlled by FSB, and they were banned in Ukraine after, I think, in 2015. But some Ukrainians, they continue to use them because they want to get in contact with their former classmates, with their friends, and they just don't understand that they're providing their data, they're providing access to the mobile devices to FSB, which is controlling those social networks.
I'd like to mention what you were talking about, the Russian Metropolitan Kirill and all this concept of supremacy of the Russian Church. I would like to remind everybody that the Christianity was brought to Ukraine from Byzantium by Vladimir Monomach about 300 years before Moscow was even existed. There was no Moscow, there was no Russia, it was nothing. It was Kipchaks, the Pechenegi, and all other the fighting people from the east. That's all what there was Russia at the time. Where Ukraine was distinct civilization, and now this Moscow Church, they can just disband themselves as completely illegal organization which has no rights to exist. And hopefully it will happen really soon. So coming back now to the front lines, now the situation is still very difficult in the Bakhmut, although it's still hanging in, and they showed how the whole city was already taken by either this Prigozhin, this army of his, are they like Mamluks? spiders, sort of new Mamluks. Although there are not too many left alive already, they still continue to fight. There are incredible things happening in Russia, all these political killings like recently in St. Petersburg, and nobody even taking um, an educated guess who it could be and who would benefit from it. Jonathan, you heard about this killing in St. Petersburg.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts?
I think it's a sign of growing internal political instability within Russia, as they are experiencing abject failure on the Ukrainian front. The opponents of Putin, or possible rivals, or possible people who would view themselves as potential successors to Putin. I saw a recent report today about Putin having to be administered special medical treatment because he was having headaches and other things, and imbalance and obvious medical systems of acute pain and acute distress. And so this is making Putin's allies as well as his rivals very nervous and very anxious for, how long can Putin last before his grip on power is, forced out of his hands. And so they're trying to position it. I think they're trying to position themselves for a potential succession struggle once Putin is in fact out of power, dead, whatever. So
Agree.
So we're seeing again, the Ukrainians, like a skillful boxer, they see their opponent is staggering, and they're waiting. They're keeping the timing and location of their counterattack very closely guarded secret. People on the outside, on both sides, can speculate all they want, but the Ukrainians are going to successfully keep their own counsel, and it will be at least a tactical, if not an operational surprise once it does finally occur.
Mm-hmm. Ivan, I would like to ask you, do you have a video that we could see from you?
Yeah, I've got a really nice video for today, and we can just show it in the end, or we can show it now. When you asked how life is going in Kiev, and I told that life in Kiev is quite peaceful now, and no war, almost no war is feeling at all. But this situation is not across the all Ukraine. Actually, Kiev is far from the battlefields. It's far from the front lines. It's like more than 600 kilometers to the front lines, actually, from Kiev. But unfortunately, in other cities, there is their citizens feel the war every day. And now I want to show you a video about Kherson, how its life is there even after the liberation of Kherson from occupation.
Okay,
let's see it.
Kherson, my city. 9 months of occupation. 9 months of defiance and protest. No matter how much Russia tried, we didn't surrender or stop waiting for liberation. November 11th, 2022, our soldiers came. We took out the Ukrainian flags we had hidden. We were crying tears of joy. We celebrated for several days. It instantly became clear that Russia wouldn't forgive us for our freedom because they are allergic to it. Kherson evolved into a frontline city. The enemy and his damn guns are just across the river from us. Authorities and volunteers immediately sent evacuation trains calling us to leave. The city seemed to freeze in suspense. A week after the liberation, it began. The terror that is hard to describe. The Russians strike us daily, using everything: mortars, Grad rocket launchers, some incendiary projectiles that burn everything down. The maternity ward, where I once gave birth to my 2 children, was struck. Our neighbor's house was struck. Luckily, they weren't home. After dreadful days, we saw our dead friend, a woman who worked her entire life on the corner of the central shopping center selling top-up cards, or a saleswoman in a stall who sold cigarettes at a bus stop. She burned alive. It was a direct hit. We've learned to recognize the sound of shells launched at us. Then we have a few seconds to hide or run to bomb shelter. We look forward to the armed forces of Ukraine kicking the Russians out of our lands. For us, the deoccupation of the left bank of Kherson Oblast is about not dying while you go to buy some bread. It is about not getting injured in the line to the post office. It is about surviving until our victory.
Ivan, thank you very much for this fantastic video. And before we'll finish, I would like to remind that yesterday, on April 10th, I remember as a child in Odessa, we were always celebrating that day because on that day in 1944, Odessa was freed from the German occupation. Actually, it was more Romanian occupation than German, but still Odessa was occupied for some time. I believe that Odessa will stand free, although there are some miseries, some bombardments, some civilians were killed by merciless Russians. But I think it will be over thanks to imminent Ukrainian incredible attack which is coming and which will be nothing that the world ever seen. And I hope it will be extremely successful. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll get together again this Friday at the same time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Slava
Goodbye.
Ukraini.
Героям слава.